Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's Fight Chat Friday, where today myself and Richie chat through 5 ways, 6 ways even, to rapidly, instantly improve your sparring. So stay tuned today for a few inspirational ideas and a few good worked examples, and hopefully you'll get a lot from this. Hey Richie.
Hey Adrian, welcome everybody who's tuned in as well. So yeah, we're back again with another Fight Chat Friday. This time we're actually sitting down to analyse some sparring. So we're living up to the name again after a little bit of a hiatus, but so we're back at it.
Well, that's it. I mean, we've gone in some different directions over the last while between the interviews with a few guests and, just tackling some different topics like the outdoor training and all the restrictions and COVID and all that kind of thing. But, a big shout out to Espen Draga, who's kindly shared quite a few videos with us, which has given us some material we didn't have access to for the last little while to dig into. And it kind of provoked a different thought as well in terms of the ebook that we put out there in the last little while, a free ebook. So Richie, if you want to maybe talk about that and how it links to today's session.
Yeah, so it's fantastic that Espen did share those videos with us, and we will be putting them out in terms of the individual fights over the next while on the YouTube channel. So shout out to Espen, thanks for that. It's been fantastic to have a look at some of those new fights that aren't on YouTube because, as you know, we haven't had many tournaments recent times, so it's good to have those new fights to kind of go through and give us some new material. But then on the ebook, we will be taking 6 of the 10 things that we mentioned in the ebook today. So you'll have that extra bonus 4 on the ebook, which there's a link for that in the description in this video. So check that out there, and we posted it as well in the live chat for people to check out. So basically, it's just 10 ways to instantly improve your sparring. So once you go through it, these are ways that you can, once you're attuned to them and you start to apply them to your sparring, you can instantly make massive progress. And these are things that, even the things we're going to cover today, that all champions have. And if you want to win, they have to be things that you have in your toolkit in sparring.
Yeah, and I mean, like everything, they're going to seem obvious and simple, I'm sure, to an awful lot of people. But at the same time, if you don't think of them, if you don't consider them, if you don't pay attention to them, then you're going to have difficulties. So it's worth pointing out how some of the best do them and engage with them. And certainly some of the fights that we were able to pick up and watch have great examples of this. So
yeah. And there's a lot of crossover in a lot of these as well, isn't there, Adrian? Like some of these things, they kind of cross into various other steps and tools as well that we will be talking on today. So you will see a bit of crossover, which is good as well, because some kind of sequences in the fights maybe cover 2 or 3 of the topics. So it's good to see that they're universal.
Absolutely.
And it was easy for us to pull clips of it as well because they occur in absolutely every single fight.
Yeah, definitely. And again, the thing with that is it's about layering those principles to arrive at a sparring style and a sparring strategy that's going to work for you. But the underlying principles are what help people, I suppose, simplify their training, simplify the game state, make decisions that are going to help them tactically and strategically, and basically just get down to work and get improving. So would you like to start with any one of them in particular?
Yeah, let's tackle the spacing one first. I think that's a good one to start off with.
Yeah, no problem at all. So we'll jump into that.
Yeah, so the premise behind this one, guys, is know your spacing. So this is twofold. First of all, we got to be aware of the spacing within the ring. And also you got to be aware of the spacing between you and your opponent. So here's a clip from the Euros 2018. And we have Ireland and Slovenia. So Slovenia is in the red. And you notice that he puts Cian on the edge here and he puts the pressure on him to almost build that warning. And that's what you're looking for here. And you've got Sam Del Rock here in blue, knows that she's that internal awareness that she knows she's on the edge and she's able to circle around.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, as you said, there's 2 factors to this. There's the distance between you and your opponent, which, kind of dictates what shots are available and what kind of steps and footwork need to be done. And then there's the spacing in the ring, the area in the ring. And those are 2 of the controllables that, we always say, no matter where you are in your sparring, those are 2 things that you can choose to engage with or control. And like what you're going to see straight away is how it influences the decision making, what shots are there. And again, those headshots aren't available from a longer distance. That the person has to move into the closer distance to be able to threaten with it.
Yeah, but even that as well, it's like what you said there, Adrian, know what shots are available, because there's certain shots that if you throw and then you're on the outside of the ring, you're not going to get the points for those. So it's knowing what's available, and it's kind of like I will always remember competing as as the coach for me, Adrian, mentioning not to kind of hang around those last two mats at the edge. Try to make my decisions before I get to that. Exactly, and that makes a massive, massive difference to people being able to, in terms of the range of shots, the options and possibilities they have when the space is there. But then we see Karolina Konik here from Poland, the red competitor with the red flag. She puts the pressure on then as well when she sees that there's an opportunity to get her opponent and push them back and squeeze the space. And the momentum that you gain from this as well by knowing your spacing is a fantastic thing that you can take from this as well, and it gives you a good bit of kind of headwind and gets you going, and potentially get some scores on the board.
Oh, absolutely. And you can see where here with the back kick, it's just a case of the perception of the spacing isn't quite right there, and you can walk yourself into trouble when you don't quite understand where your spacing is, or that your space has been taken. And I mean, so much of footwork is about hiding, disguising, that change in spacing so that you can line up the shot that you need or that you want to take without your opponent being aware that the spacing has changed.
Yeah, and do you see Adam Shelley, blue competitor against Timothy Boss, two high-level guys, and you've seen the minute there was some pressure put on him, he was able to push it back at him, so he relieved the pressure. There's Amin in blue, super comfortable on the edge, so he's not somebody who gets really threatened or bothered by being on the edge, but it's that composure to understand when to escape and know his exit options is vital. Same as Adam here, circling towards the center. And
both of them, yeah, as I said, making very conscious decisions to look at the space they want to be in the ring, and it's thinking that step ahead. Where do I need to go? What shot brings me there? So, and a step beyond that again, what do I need to offer my opponent so that I can throw the shot I want to throw?
True.
So,
love this one as well from Cian. He picks the right moment to go. I think that's the timing thing is massive with that, Adrian, as you just kind of on your last point as well, isn't it? It's the knowing when it's time to make the decision is so important.
Oh, absolutely. And the outcome varies so much depending on how you pick your moment. So as I said, pushing forward off the front leg there could have been perfect, but caught with the leg low, and we're in an awful lot of trouble because as this is the being on top as such. We just is that Liise from Netherlands? So the leg just hadn't. If she'd gotten her front leg up and got out of there, if the timing and the spacing was appropriate, that's great. But because she was caught on the way up and Karolina had her leg over the top of it, she was able to go high. Effectively Liise walked herself into a headshot there on the edge of the ring, and it's really good use of that space pressure from Karolina.
Absolutely. I love this clip here from Ince from Ireland in blue. The fact that he was able to tell the referee that the spacing wasn't correct, because he knows the spacing he needs to react, and he knows there as well that he needed that space. And it's see the change of the stance. That's something we're going to talk about later, but he's adjusting here between being able to kick and potentially being able to punch, because he understands that the distance is being squeezed, and the space is being squeezed on him, so he is ready to go to hands if necessary.
Yeah, so as a principle, I suppose, to summarize what we were talking about there with those ones, it's being conscious at all times on, and also being subconsciously trained and aware of the distance between yourself and your opponent and your position in the ring and the shots that allows you. So that's not something that you can actually be thinking through all of the time. That's something you have to be perceiving and reacting to in real time at all times.
It's an internal awareness as well, isn't it? It's like you can almost get that feeling that something is not right and you have to act. I think it's a good actual point to bring up the whole idea of perception, action, coupling. And we speak about this a lot on the channel, and it's so important to get this in your training. And it's basically perceiving that there's a danger there that you're going to run out of space and acting on that, and then doing it in the correct timing, like you've seen with Amin, like we've seen with plenty of the fighters there, Adam, Shelley, Sam Del Rock. They're picking the right moment to almost bail out before they get squeezed out of the space and it's too late.
Yeah, and one thing that people can try that's really, really simple is everybody has their comfortable space. You know, if they spar, they'll naturally bounce at a distance from their opponent where they're happy and comfortable. And when you find yourself in that position, challenge yourself by being a little closer or a little bit further away and see how your opponent reacts. Because remember, like, their space might be different to your space. And you'll often be very uncomfortable in a sparring match where your opponent is looking to put themselves in a space that you don't like, because you don't feel like, that's not where I want to pick up my leg from. That's not where I want to start my hands from. So by trying to flip the switch on that and put yourself at a position that maybe your opponent is uncomfortable with, and see what shots and strategies develop from there. It's a very, very interesting strategy, and we do actually come up with this later on the decision making one. There's a really nice example of that, so we'll swing into that a bit later. So where will we jump from spacing?
I think we talked, do you know what, spacing is a good one there, because we've seen some great examples of it, of stance adjustments and body positioning, how to adjust that. So let's have a look at that next, maybe.
Sure.
So this is vital, and you can see for us very much important, because as Adrian said, starting at further out distances and being comfortable in the different ranges is important. So being able to adjust these stances from side facing, half facing, depending on what you're going to do. We see Adam Shelley here, side facing long, completely long, and then he adjusts the body to use the hands, and it's that switch of the body positioning with the feet. It's not only your stance adjustments, but it's your upper body as well. And then Timmy Boss comes back at him with some great mix-ups there as well, trying to link the hands and feet and keep his opponent guessing. So that's the important thing, not being predictable then as well in one stance all the time. It's like, what's coming? Is it going to be the hands? Is it going to be the legs?
Yeah, I think the issue with the teaching of one stance, I mean, you can obviously default to one stance, as in that's, you know, your natural posture, and that's where you spend most of your time. But sparring is fluid, and it happens in motion. And the second you start to move, your stance shifts, because you transfer body weight from one leg to the other. You lengthen, shorten, or split your stance in order to widen it, or and because of that, if you only practice against a stationary pad or something like that in front of you, you're probably not actually kicking, punching from the stance that you'll find yourself in sparring. So being able to transition, make those adjustments, kick, punch, on and off balance, I think it's a very, very important thing to develop. And you do that by making practice a little bit more free-flowing and a little bit messier.
Yeah, and look at this one here from Adam. Like, this is an angle where you don't really see people attack from often, and because of that, it's very effective, because we're not attuned to it. So that's important as well. On the stance adjustments as well, for people who maybe just starting their sparring journeys, it's very, very important for us to adjust from a kicking position into a little bit more half facing or full facing when we want to punch. And that's to make sure that our backhand doesn't get trapped. So we're not punching in a side on position where it's very easy, where I call it like get trapped, or for a second you're in no man's land. So Sam here does a great adjustment of getting the body a little bit more full facing to allow you to punch effectively with both hands.
Yeah, and like you'll always find an example where, look, you can get away with it, or you can adapt the technique. So if you can trap your opponent's front leg, you can stay on one side and punch with one hand reasonably effectively. But that's not your ideal situation. I was just thinking here, Cian and Adam both have a lovely shot, and it's an unusual one, where when they're counter-punching the side kick, they'll often step through completely from the back leg, bringing the backhand through to effectively become the front hand as they step. It's not in that example right there, but you do see that footwork adjustment. So their opponent is lining up with a particular open or close facing against them, and their step, their follow through on that backhand punch, it starts from the stance, but they commit so much into it and they reach so far into it, it actually gains massive distance, and then automatically sets them up to be on the other side. You might actually catch one here, but what it does is it allows for some interesting interactions as well, where if your opponent is lining up a shot with, say, off the back leg or something, the leg that's in front, your body has basically changed facing. So, again, in terms of adjustment, it's a huge one.
Yeah, and look at the blitz here. A lot of people make the mistake of blitzing and staying half facing, but look at Amin. He's side facing, ready to kick, and then look at that adjustment. So now he can actually
pops.
Exactly, he can drive through Christofer here and push him, and then he actually gets the warning because of that. If he was side facing, that probably doesn't happen because he can't get his foot to the outside.
Definitely.
Similar situation here with this one as well. So not only can you potentially score and gain some momentum relieve some spacing, but you can also pick up some warnings by transitioning your body and coming through people while they're still stuck and half facing, because their body will just lose balance. Cian then on the other side does the example of adjusting, so he adjusts quickly to get out of there. But even look at the stance adjustments as well from the Slovenian. He was able to push and pull, what we call. So he drifts back slightly and quickly adjusts that stance to make sure that he can get that forward momentum to come in like a train.
Yeah, and you know what? It's one of those things that it's never noticed in the flow of the match. You know, it's one of those things where if it's not working, it might not be the first thing that comes to mind if you're sitting there watching it as a coach, or if you were even watching your own fight back as a competitor, it might not be the first thing that comes to mind. But those little micro adjustments in the stance are essential to being effective. You know, letting the hips work, letting those pivots through the shoulders work as well, and keeping yourself on balance. So all those little adjustments the whole time are what keep you on the right distance and keep you in the right range to be able to throw your shots effectively, to allow you to move the head and shoulders out of the way, to allow you to make that switch back kick work. So as you said, being comfortable in making those adjustments in your stance and kicking and punching from all of those positions, a nice core skill that will improve things for you very quickly as you start to pay attention to it.
And we actually seen in one of the clips there as well, Liise was actually using a lot of like a boxing stance, and she came in very heavy with the hands. And that's we touched on this question last Tuesday as well. That's very effective, and then but being able to transition between both is just another level. So there's some good fighters like Liise there who are very capable of being able to do that, and then be very dominant when the hands come at that closer range.
Yeah, for sure. So maybe we'll have a little bit of a look at getting on top. It's a very, very simple principle that we've talked about for quite a while, and just a few short clips on this one where it's looking at what can happen when you're the one who manages to keep in the primary position. So Ryan Shelley's been pushed back here by Timothy Boss, and his decision is needs to make sure that he is not the one on the receiving end of that leg. So he picks his moments and only engages with the leg when he's going to have the higher position. And here again, this is a clip we've seen before from Cian. It's even going in a circle around to keep above the leg and deliver with a little bit of not even a lot of force, but what he does by being over the leg is he neutralizes what his opponent can do, reduces their ability to score, and he can land in that, you know, prime position to be effective from there. So you know, it's a very simple principle to understand, maybe not quite as simple to apply.
Yeah, what I love about that last example from Cian as well is that I think that's what allows, what flows from this is a continuation. And the fact that he was able to get on top towards the end of it allowed the possibility of him being able to get to that the hand technique at the very end. So I think it might be maybe this clip where we see the fact that he's on top allows that. If you're the person on bottom, your leg and hip are trapped. So what you can do is, this is the one. So he's on top here, and because he's on top, this gives him the opportunity to get in. If that was his leg on bottom, he wouldn't have that opportunity because his half of his body is trapped. So it's very, very effective.
The expectation is definitely that if you're standing on one leg on the last mat of the ring, you're going out. It's just a matter of time.
True.
And your opponent should be able to create the pressure to make that happen. But what Cian's done in that case is he's kept his leg above, so his opponent will have to find. He tried for it. He went with the back leg dolio under the leg. You know, the one thing he didn't do is spin into it, which is, you know, maybe the way that you can do it, where Cian has to pull the leg down fast enough to get to hands or put the leg on the hip to interrupt the spin. But those kind of things are definitely considerations. The leg over the top does tend to give you the advantages, and you know, you bring your body weight to bear much more effectively from that position as you go.
Yeah, well, what the most important thing with that as well is the modern day ITF game is a lot of front leg fencing. So if you're the person who is on top, you have a massive advantage. So it is a skill that you need if you want to be able to kind of maximize your strengths, especially if you're good on that front leg and you come up against somebody who is also quite sharp off their own front leg. You need to win that battle then of getting on top. But it's not only the legs then as well, Adrian. It can also be a principle in terms of punching. We've seen from an old clip, one of our older Fight Chat Fridays with Zach. Yeah, not the tallest guy in his division, but his body being upright when he punched, he was able to get a lot of good shots off by being on top. when he punched as well. So it's a visual thing for referees too. It's like what you make it easy for the referees to see, they're going to reward on the scorecards, and they're going to click the button.
Yeah, and I think with Zach, like the being on top with the hands, a lot of that came from him being left-sided against, primarily right-sided fighters, and he was able to bring that left jab over the shoulder of the right hand of his opponents a lot of the time, bringing himself to the outside of the body, keeping the hand from traveling, or his opponent's punch from traveling up to his face. Just it's a nice positional place to be, and again, it just complies to that concept of like, can we be on top? Can we be the one holding the dominant position? Which is different to, when we were saying about the, sometimes if you're going to arrive into a clinch, it's better to be underneath and have both hands under so that you can control the next movement of the body a little bit better. But, in terms of actually throwing your shots, being on top is definitely the way to go. Yeah,
and like we can see the crossover here already now between stances linking up. We've seen that example you just spoke about with Adam and Cian, and even Ryan as well. So that example of like the double underhooks and swimming around, they're able to readjust the position to correct their spacing. So now their opponent is on the edge, which is a nice little trick to have as well in your toolbox.
So let's have a look at bossing the fight a little bit. So just picked out a couple of examples of this before we go into maybe some of the deeper stuff on the creativity and the proactiveness. But here we go. So the first bit we're going to have a look at here in terms of being the boss is forcing engagement. And again, this links right back again to our spacing and our distance. So as we come into this one, Bartosz in the red is 4-0 down against Danylo. And he's had to impose himself in the match to get back into it. So you can see the body language straight away is, I'm going to stand in this closer space and you're going to have to do something. And it's what we were talking about with that spacing earlier, where, if you can impose yourself and stand at a point where your opponent is not comfortable, and Danylo, he's a great counter fighter. So if he has the time to read the shots, he's going to be brutal. And, I think Bartosz does a great job here of squeezing the space and, maintaining pressure and just not giving breathing room for Danylo to express himself completely and do what he did in round one.
Yeah, so when we talk about being the boss, there's the three kind of things that we're looking to control here is, as you said, the spacing and the distance, the tempo, and then the ring positioning as well. So you can see Bartosz is trying to get control of those there. As you said, if he gives the space, ring position, and tempo to Danylo, he's well capable of taking control of that match completely. But Bartosz recognizes that one of his biggest strengths, having sparred both of these guys, I know for a fact that Bartosz's biggest weapon is actually coming straight through off that front hand, which it's actually quite low, but the way he actually comes up through it is very effective. So he recognizes that, and he's able to squeeze the space, noticing that he needs to put some pressure going forward while staying super close as well. And then that allows him to get off his biggest strengths, which allows him to effectively be the boss in this particular clip.
Yeah, and one of the things that we might well say, if Bartosz is walking back for his bit of his 1 minute of coaching in the middle of this match, it's okay. The scorecards are against you. Let's take control of things one thing at a time. And it might be a case of, right, step one, take the center. Step two, control the space between you and Danylo. It needs to be closer so he can't counter as fluidly. And then step three, tempo is going to be the one that allows you to dictate the pace of the engagement and be unpredictable. So I think that's it's a really nice example in that sense of how to re-establish control in the match. So this one is looking a little bit differently at distance, and this is about keeping distance to where your opponent is uncomfortable. We're looking at Ryan Shelley in red and Timothy Boss in blue, and this goes. There's examples in both directions for this one of how they force the match to a distance that they're happy with, and it makes the other person very uncomfortable.
I really like this little clip here. It's good, and that continuation there, we came from Ryan being on top with the leg again, just like the last principle we spoke about. He was able to get the hands because of that. But you can see there that they're both looking for that control, and that's where sometimes the contest within the contest happens, where they're both trying to set their kind of stall out and decide where they want the fight to take place, the distance they want it. So are you comfortable at it, having it at a closer range? Are you more of a puncher? Are you more of a kicker? So it's you deciding that as a factor for yourself, and then making that decision and trying to make the other person live in that space.
And here you can see the second half of this, it's much more in Ryan's favour. He's controlling the distance and he's keeping it longer. He's choosing to either be just outside Timmy's kicking range or stepping in through that range and onto the hands and then disengaging again. Whereas what we find, as we go through this section here, Timmy's picking much better options to. Oh, sorry, we haven't quite got back to it yet. But yeah, in the beginning section, Timmy's able to bring it to hands. He's able to push with kicking doubles. He's bringing Ryan onto a range that he's much happier with, and in doing that, he's definitely building pressure in his favour by doing that.
And one of the big things that we're looking to be the boss of, to suit yourself, is tempo. And Timothy's biggest strength, in my opinion, is his continuation and his combinations. And we see it here. Once he gets in and he gets going, that's where he gets his most scores. And he's very effective in the Wacko rule set in particular. So it's setting out the tempo that you want as well. Where Ryan is trying to have a kind of a slower tempo where he can dictate the pace more and then control the range. Whereas Timmy is looking to up that tempo, and you can see he's trying to get in there, and that's what he's looking to do.
Yeah, Ryan definitely is looking for cleaner single scores. Having Timothy get very little return for the higher work rate, make him kick out and miss and overcommit, leaving opportunities for those long side kicks on the hip, the occasional flicky over the blind side shoulder, and the front hand direct counter. So again, what we're thinking about here, though, and good examples from both competitors, is they both have different wants in that match. And so each one finding their way to play the game and forcing or dictating to the other person around that tempo is very, very important. So and of course they're related. So the tempo does relate to the distance. So it's very hard to have a high tempo match at a long distance. You tend to have a higher tempo match at a closer distance, and it's very hard to slow it down unless you're very imposing, in a close distance. So, those kind of things do link. But, it's about bringing it to where you're a little more comfortable and your opponent's a little bit more uncomfortable, and then building on that advantage.
Yeah, so like be the boss means you're living in the place where your strengths show the best, isn't it? It's like, where do you want the fight to be? It's not necessarily you have to hold the center. It's like if you're better like on the outside picking your opponent off, then that's what you need to do. But then be aware of the spacing, as I said. So as you can see, a lot of these principles interlink, and it's when you can kind of link them all together and get a chain reaction going with them is where you see the big return on your sparring output.
So will we have a little bit of a look at creativity and proactiveness then, as our next bit? So a nice way to remember that: create, don't waste.
Yeah. So this is, as you said, is all about proactivity. It's like basically not waiting for your opponent to be. It's very much linked to the last one, actually, Adrian. When you think about it, it's like not being reactive and allowing them to get control. It's like you're trying to put out what you want to do first, taking control of the match, not being reactive. So sometimes if you're a counter style fighter, a big problem is actually waiting for your opponent to make the first move and then try counter. But you're almost a step behind then already. So the trick here is to almost set traps with your footwork, with your movement, body positioning, even fake and feints. So that's the important thing here with create, don't wait. It doesn't necessarily mean just techniques. You don't have to throw shots and shots and shots to create. But you can create opportunities with your body, your footwork, your distance adjustments, all of these other things.
Yeah, and I think it can be really defined as, in any given moment, are you acting or reacting? And, you want to, as often as possible, someone's trying to reach me. You want to, as often as possible, be the one that is that is acting and driving the other person to react. And what happens with that is you end up very, very quickly in a situation where once you're looking at it, you recognize moments where you're just bouncing aimlessly, where your movement didn't have a particular purpose, where you weren't setting something up, inviting, offering, and we have to be a little bit more critical of ourselves, and and when we're coaching, of empty movements, stuff that's just happening, like just effectively moving around the ring for no particular reason. So if we're a little bit more present in what we do, and we're forcing our opponent to react to the invitations that we're giving them, to the movement that we're giving them, it's a much better chance that what follows is going to be in our favor.
And I love this clip from Amin here in blue, because people think, okay, he's just bouncing, he's waiting, but he's not. Because watch the adjustment of the step here. This creates an action. Watch his feet now. The test step that he does, boom, that creates a reaction. That is still creating movement and action in the contest to keep his opponent almost reacting to him. So then that allows him to pick the right moment that he can be in control of. So it's very, very important.
Yeah, definitely. And, again, some of it is very, very subtle. It's a case of making a little bit of an adjustment, giving your, a head lean in there, changing the tempo of your bounce, making a little bit of a shift forward or an adjustment in step. But as long as your opponent is following your lead and you don't find yourself kind of, oh, I've just bounced at your rhythm or tempo, I've just, you've decided to raise the tempo and I've tried to raise the tempo to match you. It's making a decision about, am I happy to raise the tempo? Would I prefer to slow it down? Maybe you tries to raise the tempo and I just step off and move off the line. Maybe we have a situation where you're trying to slow the tempo and, and make the distance long, and I just step in and squeeze, it can be even letting the person have the lead for a moment, so that they start to get comfortable, and then breaking that and immediately attacking, can be a great way of like re-establishing that connection.
Yeah, and for people who are watching this who may be kind of like starting their journey in Taekwondo or competing or sparring, you will get away with sometimes being more of reactive when you start off, and somebody maybe is not at the same level you're at. So if you want to like counter somebody and they're not really at your level, maybe you're like a year or two experienced more than the other person, you will get away with this a little bit more. But it's when the fighters are at a very similar level and they're both very experienced, then you can't rely on waiting. You have to be the one that's creating the actions, and you have to be the creative one there, because if you wait at the high level, you're going to get found out and they're going to pick off the scores and they're going to be too clever and not give you the opportunities. Once they see it once, that's it. They won't give it to you again.
Yeah, for me, a really good way of putting this is, if at any point in time you are flipping a coin, you have a 50-50 chance of being right. Now, the thing is, for the person who is waiting to counter a shot or who is basically reacting, it's not a coin. It's not that there's only two options. You're rolling a dice. You're entering the lottery. There's any amount of possibilities, and you getting and again, the issue is that once the other person starts, if you were to go from cold, they have enough of a head start on you that it's not physically possible to counter them anyway. So in order for us to make a successful counter, we have to perceive all of the preemptive actions that the person makes to set up the shot, and we have to already be processing our reaction to that. So what can make that an awful lot easier is to simplify the game state. The more options we remove, the cleaner the signal that we're going to get. We're taking the signal away from the noise. We were chatting about this earlier, but so when I move to one side, now it eliminates this side. I don't have to think about this half anymore. When I carry my guard low, okay, now I eliminate the lower shots. I only have to think about the higher ones, and vice versa. When I go at a faster speed, well, that takes away the blitz maybe, because you're not going to blitz someone who's circling fast. When I go at a slower speed, maybe I'm inviting that more, or if I move in a straight line forwards or backwards, you're inviting a person to put pressure forwards and to stretch a little bit, So by signaling and giving, signals to your opponent, you're helping them narrow down on what they should throw, and that helps you. In the same way as if you want to go forward, if you can commit a person to the straight line going backwards, well, then every combination you've ever practiced works. Whereas if they still have the choice to drift right or left after your first shot in the dark, you might or might not be able to connect with anything.
This very much reminds me of a position in jiu-jitsu called 50-50, and that's the reason. It's like both people effectively can take control here, so nobody really has the dominant position. But then what people do is they set traps. They open positions for people to go for things, and then that sets a trap for you to almost create something to happen. And it's kind of like what you're saying there. It's like the top guys, for people who are watching, they don't just wait and counter. They set traps and set opportunities that their opponents bite on, and that puts them a step ahead. So it's like chess. Yeah,
and that's what Adam had put in there: feints, bait the attack, and counter. And that's absolutely it. We have a little look at decision making.
Let's go.
So I think that's the next one that we have. So Yeah, and in this case, it's making the correct decisions under pressure is always going to be the the thing that we're looking at. And I like this particular one where Amin finds himself on the receiving end of a couple of side kicks, and he's like, okay, we'll have to think about this. This isn't going so well, and he changes something. And this is the kind of thing that if you can't react in the moment to the situation as it presents itself and change up your tactic, the same thing will continue to work. And he's just made a slight change to the angle. He's recognized the lift. He knows where what the lift looks like, and he's now finding his way around the side of the side kick and into safe space. And he's able to deliver that single back fist counter, and super effective. So as you can see, hasn't quite got it right there. Hasn't got the read on the side kick. Makes a decision. We're going to do this a bit differently now. And from that point in time, you can see, oh, okay, now I'm making my angle.
That's a great find, that clip, Adrian. Great example of that, because you can see it there. He adjusts, and why it's a great clip is because he adjusts within maybe 10 seconds. And for me, that's absolutely vital, because our rounds in ITF sparring of 2 rounds of 2 minutes, and even shorter in team sparring, means that we don't have the luxury to spend a lot of time figuring things out. We must figure things out quickly and adjust if they're not working.
Yeah.
So a fighter can't depend on the minute break between for their coach to get the message across. You have to recognize while you're in there what's working, what's not, and adjust very, very quickly. And that's why it's important to not have kind of like a one-size-fits-all approach to everything. You need adjustments. And even the way Amin was essentially looking for the same thing, but in a different way.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important here in terms of your decision-making. We will very much link that together with adapting. And it's the same thing, making decisions based on what the information presents itself to you.
And even as he's taking a sit down there, it's just, you have to imagine his mind is going, okay, what do I do? What's important now? What's next? And, it's not panicking and going into, okay, I have to run away for a while here. It's making a decision in a split second there as you stand up going, okay, I'm going to tackle this a little bit differently. And I think that's what's impressive. And like, I just picked this other one out to highlight just how tuned in and aware some top level competitors are of like their decision making, the board. And you can see there with Adam, and I've done this one in slow motion, there's a shot thrown, and then Adam has that little adjustment. Oh, okay, we'll have a look at this out glove. Yeah, have a look back at that scoreboard, and going from the beginning just to see why. Like Timmy has thrown a shot here, and Adam's not sure, has somebody actually given that as a score. He's like, okay, I need to check that. So the glove gets loose at just the moment there. You can see it pulled with the left hand. Yeah. The thumb is out. I'll just take a quick look at the scoreboard now. But just to think he's a one-trick pony, can also do this on the fly. So later in the match, everything's going well. That's a headshot. I think that's a headshot. Let me have a look. Yes, that's a headshot. Because of course you don't know if it's scored. And I think this is about you can see Amin making a decision based on what he's experienced in the ring, and it's, I got hit, I didn't pick the right line in the side kick, I need to change it. But then there's also giving yourself the correct information, and there's a good and a bad strategy. But like, you can see where Adam has to make sure that he's making his decisions with the correct game state in mind. He's finding opportunities within the match to absorb the information he needs, and he's basing his next decision, his next actions on that. And look, we know Adam well enough that we can point out when he's been a bit cheeky, but equally, we can look at that other situation where if you do watch the matches, the most experienced competitors use dead time to check the scoreboard. They're not checking the scoreboard, when they can potentially be hit by their opponent. They're not checking the scoreboard. They need a second and a half to absorb what's on that screen and put it into a game plan. But they need to already know what's going to happen So if Adam goes and looks back at that and the headshot hasn't scored, his next action is different to when he looks back and he goes 4-0. I've just picked up 3. The bars have all shifted left. Where if he looks back at that and it hasn't, and it's still a close match, well, now maybe he maybe he doesn't consider, you know, the availability of a warning. Maybe he doesn't consider getting on the bike and going around the ring. Maybe he takes the center, puts up the fence, you know, and decides to hang that way. And that's quite different. And even though the first one was in the very early stages, knowing that he could be if that lands, he could be 2 flags down, you know, from Timothy. If Timothy has got that shot to the body and it's gotten onto the scoreboard, he could be 2 flags down, 2 points down on 2 cards right away at the start of the match, and that changes everything. So knowing the game state right away is pretty important for him there. And so we can see, I think what is the example of, like, have you heard the book, there's thinking fast and thinking slow, and there's the right time for each, and it's a little bit like that. It's like sometimes you have to make your decision immediately under pressure with poor information, and you've just got to think fast based on everything you've absorbed over years of gaining experience. And sometimes you actually have to take the time to make the correct decision, you know, evaluate the information and the facts and act. Now, the difference in Taekwondo could be less than a second to having slightly more than a second. It could be that you have the 45-50 seconds of the halftime break to go and reevaluate and chat with a coach. But that element of the thinking fast, thinking slow, and arriving at the correct decision, I think is something that you can genuinely work on.
I loved them 2 clips together because it shows that it's both conscious and subconscious cues that we're tying together and linking together to make the decisions. It's not just one, it's not just the other. We need to have both. It's the scoreboard dictates what's working, what's not working for you to adjust on, as well as what we've seen with Amin, just based on feel. He didn't even have to look at the scoreboard to know that it wasn't working. So it's combining the 2 of those is vital, and I like the way the clips there show the both examples. It's very, very important. And what I think is very important based on that then is how we train.
Yes.
You need to live in a situation where you're making decisions constantly. You're not just, if your training isn't based on decision making, where you're just doing the same thing over and over and over again, as you're sparring training, you're not developing the correct cognitive abilities to make these decisions on the fly based on the different information that comes towards you, based on things working and not working. Problem solving.
Yeah, and we have to remember as well that your training environment is not going to be quite as stressful, quite as intense, and quite as immediate as the environment that you're going to be in when you're competing. So you have to give some thought to how do you create some of those game time, nerve stresses, time pressures, you know, and so on in your training environment. And it's completely manageable. These are just psychological components of the training, and you can increase this stress, whether it's by, you know, auditory stimulus, visual stimulus. You can, you know, you can add fatigue. You can introduce like kind of decision paralysis by giving people too many options. You can increase stress by coaching one side against the, you know, there's a lot of things that you can play with. And we need to use all of the available tools to make sure that you're prepared, so that we can go back to that old analogy of, you know, train hard, fight easy. So that it is a real challenge on the mental load side of it to make training, and we see this every year when it comes to squad training. You know, the first couple of squads, it takes a little while before people are willing to actually push hard enough to where training is representative of competition.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what we're always striving to get to in the squads. We want to have people having had effectively on the floor of a squad training session 20-30 competitions worth of sparring done by the time they go to the competition. You know, that's what we're looking for.
You see, like in WT and other sports, they do fight simulations, and it's the same thing. You're trying to replicate what's going to happen, and you need those live training bouts for that to happen, because you need to react on real, genuine distance, timing, decisions that your opponent's going to make, the scoreboard. These are all things that ebb and flow, and there's no like straight direction that you're going to go in. So you have to be dynamic in your decision making then as well, and you need to be comfortable in that chaos, being able to make decisions based on what happens. And that's a skill in itself. It's not something that you can just go in and do, and you need to get the experience of being in those live situations as often as possible.
For sure. So then, you know, just a couple of weeks ago, we popped out, again, it's a free ebook, so everybody's very, very welcome to go and grab their copy. All we ask people to do is provide us with an email address so we can update you whenever we're sending out, you know, our summaries or updates, any of the blog posts, anything like that we will send out. It's very periodic. But for me, this is a great checklist kind of thing, so that if you're starting to watch back your fight videos, having a look at your last time in competition, or maybe it's when you get back to competing or even training, having somebody to actually video your matches and then go back and use each of these as a lens to kind of review your sparring. So it's like, if you watch back and you say, right, I'm not going to watch everything, but I'm going to just look at what's my spacing like. Okay, and I'll just watch the whole match or multiple matches, and I'll look at my spacing, and then come up with an action point or a couple of performance improvement goals, or your pigs, based on your spacing, and train that for a while, and then come back and watch the same matches again, but look at, okay, when am I the boss, and when am I the leader, when am I the follower, and pick out a few performance improvement goals, and it becomes something then that with iteration you can keep going back to your performance plan, your competition plan, and setting yourself new relevant goals that are based on your last number of competitions, the things that you've been training and looking to improve on. And what that does then is, now it's not as important, the winning and losing. It's the focus shifts to your performance. Goals. Yeah. And I think those process goals,
Yeah. Plus with this as well, you've got 4 extra tips that we haven't covered today, which today we covered a lot of like tactical stuff and in the ring stuff, but there's bits on psychology. We have like the 4 facets really. We have the physical, the technical, the psychological, and then we have the tactical, which we covered a lot of today. And so it's going through those different lenses as well. So it's important to kind of see where is the place that you need to kind of work on and double down on if it's going well. And so, as you said, I think it's a great idea to kind of use that as a template to see where you're going to move forward and what you may need to add in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, sometimes, the value of a tool like that, sometimes you'll read it and you go, I knew all that already, or I had that all in my head already. But sometimes it's helpful. It's a memory aid. It's going back to, but really, have I looked at life through this lens? I mean, remember, we can simplify and simplify. Sparring is hit and don't get hit. Now you know all you ever need to know about sparring.
Yeah.
There's a bit of nuance and detail to it though. So, as we go into that nuance and detail, it helps to be able to go, to the next level of next order of thinking. And of course, we can go way more in depth than what we've done in this ebook, and we regularly do in these sessions. But that's not the point. The point is to give you just, 10 ways of thinking, or 10 things to focus on, and say, look, one of these is going to improve your sparring right away. You've just got to kind of put in a little bit of legwork on your own behalf and figure out, where do I get the most bang for my buck? Where can I spend my time most efficiently? And I think that's kind of the goal of this particular ebook.
Definitely. So as we said, there's a link for that in the description. So just click down below. If not, just go to our website, tkdcoachacademy.com, and you'll see it on the store side there. It's free. Just go in, download it, provide your email. That's the only transaction. If you did think this video was good, definitely hit the thumbs up button on YouTube. If you are new to our channel and maybe this is your first time coming across us, welcome. I hope that you did enjoy that and take something new. So make sure and subscribe if you want to be up to date with our new videos every week. So we do Fight Chat Friday every week. Make sure you tune in. We have some guests lined up for the next couple of weeks and things like that, and different things we're going to tackle. So make sure and get in touch with us on social media. Drop us a message if you have some suggestions. We hope you took some good value from this video anyway. And make sure and get involved in the comments and let us know some of your own suggestions on any of these things as well. We'd be keen to hear from you.
Very good. So until then, we will see you next Friday.
See you next Friday, everybody. Thanks for joining.